Hello, everybody, and welcome to Boss Talks. This is episode 36. I'm your host, Evan Happel with Community Boss. We are a great solution for meeting all your needs regarding parking, amenities, mapping, revenue generation. If you want to know more, let me know. I'd love to talk about it. But today, that's not why we're here. We're here to have a great guest number 36 of Boss Talks, Jessica Fern-Kirkland. She is actually, funny enough, from the same state and city as myself. So we're representing Covington, Washington today. We love the Cov, as we say here in Covington. And she's been in this state for, as far as I know, her whole life. But she can correct me if I'm wrong. But she's been first on the property management side, did a lot of training for a well-known company in the United States here in property management. She jumped over to the vendor side, supplier side for about a year, I think. And then now, just doing a startup thing with, $9 billion in assets. So no big deal. That's pocket change. No big thing to jump into that. But she's going to have a lot to say about that, I'm sure, as she's in the thick of everything getting going with PMG, who she's with now. So without further ado, I'm bringing her to the show. All right.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. And I forgot to mention, you are in Napa. You're at the social media summit. And
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's a little stormy.
I know. Yeah, I brought a little Seattle with me to Napa. So definitely repping the Cov here. And
Yeah.
I love the Cov. It's like one of my favorite things. I actually serve on the Human Services Commission. I'm the chair of the commission for the city of Covington. And that's something that we reference quite often is the love the Cov.
Yeah. If you weren't busy enough, you're also helping with our city government, which I appreciate immensely. Thank you for serving in that capacity. But then there's the fact that you're starting essentially a property management company. So
yeah, that's been it's been a whirlwind in the best way possible. And I think that's one of the beauties about multifamily is I've never been or worked in an industry that you literally can go as far as you want with the right attitude and hard work. And I'm just now getting my degree. I'm getting my bachelor's of science in psychology, but I don't have any other formal education other than street cred, which, in multifamily pays dividends in education. But there's, I'm specializing in industrial organizational development. And so for this particular project and initiative and career, it's one of those that I feel like when I started as a leasing agent, and I was an assistant manager, worked affordable for a little bit. And there was many times in my career where I'm like, what is the point of this? And it all came right back around to right here, because all these different experiences, not just in multifamily, but with life, it's relevant here and it's relevant today. And I feel very grateful to have the opportunity to be trusted to scale this organization that's been through a lot of growth very quickly.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but I want to start off with do some kickoff fun questions. And I just want to say thank you to those that are watching. We got Stephanie Anderson, whom I know you are very familiar with.
Yes. Hi, Stephanie.
She's watching. And as she points out, that you also go to school to expand your institutional knowledge. There's a lot you have done upon yourself to learn about this industry beyond, obviously there's psychology and that's helpful, but you've also done a lot of work in learning just more about multifamily and things around this industry. So yeah, I look at your LinkedIn and there's a lot you did. Now, what I find, and we'll get to my questions, but what I find, I just want to point out, and I find like a interesting thing that I don't know if anybody ever asks about is you actually went to school for, like, I want to say auto mechanics.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's a little fun fact about me. I really leaned into automotive in high school. And so my dad, he spent his whole career in automotive and was a service advisor, service manager for Subaru. And he just retired from there actually. And I had a really hard time in high school, like finding my place. I'm very outspoken about the fact that I am proudly neurodivergent. So I have ADHD, and it's something I've really leaned into over the last few years, and not something I really knew. Like I knew it in high school, but didn't at the same time. And when I started taking automotive, I love cars. I love mechanics. I love engineering, which is probably why I ended up in property technology for a little bit. Still super passionate about technology. It was just, I really needed something like that at the time. And I ended up getting scholarships to go to Green River Community College for automotive. And I didn't finish. I went until I ran out of money and was making a lot of money at my job at the time. I was working at 24-Hour Fitness in sales. And, I think part of me is always meant to be in sales, but I didn't finish. But I was, for a hot minute, ASC certified in electrical. So I can still do, I still diagnose things all the time. I'm not going to change my own oil, even though I can. But yeah, I love cars.
All right. Well, I'll call you up when I have a car thing.
Okay. Okay.
You can just pop on over,
Perfect.
Yeah.
Love it.
No big deal. No big deal. Well, that's fun. That's fun. So I do want to get to my question. So the first question I like to ask is, when it comes to building community, we are Community Boss. What are some ways, and I think I know some of the answers, that you like to both professionally and personally build community?
Yeah, I think building community is an underrepresented necessity, and community and relatedness and connectedness. It's actually one of the three ingredients in motivation. Like psychologically, there's a self-determination theory that says that when you have autonomy and when you have competence and when you have relatedness or sense of community, those are the three things that contribute to motivation. It's also in both physiological and psychological hierarchies of needs. And so there's a lot of research and data around the importance of community and connectedness and even like searching for meaning, right? It all has to do with other people, and that's how humans operate. We're meant to be around other people. So it can be difficult to build the right type of community. In my own personal life, I sometimes tend to be a little bit of a hermit, and which surprises a lot of people. I'm a very introverted extrovert, but my community is with my friends and my family, and I've got a husband and 2 kids, and so they're really like my little village, and I believe that it takes a village. So building community, it involves inviting people over to a space where they can be themselves, meeting other people where they're at, helping line people up with help and support. I think just how I am as a community with another person has a lot to do with the receptiveness and, how you allow someone to authentically show up and feel non-judged. I think that's what you want from that sense of community is, can I trust you with my well-being? And those things translate into both professional environments. And, I do a lot of community with the Human Services Commission. So one of the things that we do for the city of Covington is we provide or we make funding decisions on which agencies get resources. So we were actually super blessed to get extra resources and funds as a result of the pandemic. So we're able to fund mental health resources, school resources, resources for seniors, food, transportation. So getting access to basic needs and removing barriers to get basic needs, I think translates into any form, right? Personal or professional. Yeah. What's one of the things that's been a challenge at PMG is figuring out, what do you need access to that you don't have yet? Do you feel
Mm,
comfortable raising your hand?
mm,
How do you work through culture that you've got on your plate that you presently have that you're not responsible for? So how do you shift those patterns of behavior and those things that maybe weren't so pleasant? That even goes into that sense of community, because we want people to be able to know that their whole selves are welcome, that we believe in inclusivity. But it's one thing to say that, it's another thing to demonstrate it.
mhm.
So I really like to put my money where my mouth is, and try to be the best example that I can, even though I'm not always going to get it right. But I think when you are yourself, it invites others to be themselves too. And there's no better way to build community than when two people show up authentically themselves and giving each other the benefit of the doubt. There's a lot of little things that go into that, but a lot of it's just extending the hand, being kind, being welcoming, and continuously reaching out to make sure that even the quiet voices are included.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And as somebody else pointed out, it's watching, you know, being in community extends your life too. Like, so when it comes to work, figuring out, I mean, and it's hard when we're spread out, like as we get more remote in these jobs, it's like, our company also is trying to figure out, how do we stay connected even though we're separated or scattered. So like that is challenging,
It,
you
it
know?
it is. And I think multifamily is so interesting. I don't know why or how an industry with this many people who have, we house people, we are people, but we are so behind the times with things. And it's almost like we create these rules that we feel like we have to live in. And that's one of the things I am really dedicated to doing here at PMG, is coloring outside the lines. If it's not working for us, let's redefine what that looks like.
Yeah.
Like, are people having Zoom calls in organizations just to say that they did? Like, what does connectedness mean for your organization and for your people? I just launched and wrote PMG's core values, which I've never done before. I've done lots of exercises around them. I've done coaching and consulting to help other people do it. But when it comes to figuring out like what the identity is of the people who impact the organization, it's a lot of listening. And I think that when we listen, we are more likely to hear just the implicit and organic things about our friends, about our family, about our companies. And it allows us to not try to fit things inside of a box, but let the organization create the box. And sometimes that is someone raising their hand saying, these Zoom calls are a huge waste of time. And can we connect this way, or can we connect that way? I think one of the things that people don't realize, whether it's personal or professional, is because we are such social creatures. And, like the comment said, being in the community is the extension of the community. When isolation happened and the lockdowns happened, that's not a natural environment for human beings to live in. It
Yeah.
could be related to even like cruel and unusual punishment. They used to do that. They used to put people in
Oh, right.
isolation, and it creates a level of suspicion. It creates a level of distrust. And you can't just take people, lock them down, put them in isolation, and then throw them back into these environments without some social adaptation period where we
Yeah.
learn how to come together, just like we had to learn to come apart. So
Yeah.
there is a social aspect of this that requires care, and it requires intention, and it requires a strategy. And when people are in a position to make those types of decisions, the best thing that people can do is ask the people who are going to be impacted how they would like to see it done.
Yeah. No, that's all really good. And we need to ask more questions, because sometimes we just implement stuff because we think it's what should be done, or like you said before, like it's just what we've done in this industry. So yeah, we need to do better at like looking outside the industry too. It's just like, let's learn from other people, other companies, other industries, in all the things, because there's people doing stuff differently. That's for sure. So,
Yeah.
no, that's great. Thanks for sharing all that. All right. Question 2. If you were having someone over for dinner, what would you make them? That is something that you personally really enjoy and want to share with them.
I love cooking, and this is going to sound very lame, but I make great vegetables. I do.
Great
I
vegetables.
can cook a mean veggie. I can air fry
Okay.
them. I can saute them. And my husband and I, he is like the grill master, and we
Okay.
grill all the time. So I would have to tag him in because he and I's signature dish is steak, blue cheese, baked potato, asparagus or broccolini, and roasted cauliflower. So that is like our signature dish. We've been making it since we met. Our first date, we ended up like running to QFC and like grabbing steaks at 10 p.m. And we cooked that meal together our first night, and it was just so much fun to have that as a part of our relationship and now part of our marriage, to have cooking and experimenting that way. So that would be, I'd have to ask him for help because he can grill a mean steak, but I got the veggies on lockdown.
Nice. I haven't had veggies as an answer, so
okay.
you are unique today when it comes to picking vegetables. But hey, vegetables when cooked right can be really tasty. So so there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. All right, and then you are from Seattle, where I'm from Seattle. My company's from Seattle. When it comes to coffee, what is your favorite drink of choice?
Not Starbucks. So I am not hard to please. I love a good, just black cup of coffee. I don't put anything in it. I drink it black like my soul. And we actually get our coffee. It's like one of the things that we spoil ourselves with. My husband really likes coffee too. And so we actually get ours from Camano Island coffee roasters. And so they will ship it, they'll roast the beans, ship it. And so it's super fresh and have lots of different, really just great flavors. So, and then if it's not that, then it's Folgers, right? Best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup sometimes.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah. If you're not going to go with the good stuff, don't go with basically, if you're not going to go with the good stuff, don't go with Starbucks.
Yeah. I'm not a Starbucks fan. Sorry, Seattle.
It's okay. I think people would be, I mean, not that Starbucks is hurting here. There's plenty of people going to Starbucks here in Seattle. It's everywhere. But we do have lots of other smaller shops and stuff, and lots of coffee roasters that are kind of more boutique-y. So it's fun.
Yes. Like if I am going to go through and get coffee somewhere, it's got to be Kelly lattes. Have you been to a Kelly's?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's one in Enumclaw. And so we'll stop. I don't know if you've been to that one, but where we go to like the pumpkin patch, we'll stop through Kelly's and get the kids hot chocolate, and I'll get a drip coffee, and then we'll go hit up the pumpkin patch. So
yeah. Is that the one with, it has a big outdoor seating area? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I haven't gone to it and gotten coffee, but I've definitely driven by it.
Yeah.
So anyways, well, that's great. So you're going to get some coffee from us, just FYI. Our own what we call Boss Blend. You also get your own little mug and some other fun stuff as well. So
score.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna feel like a boss drinking Boss Blend.
You will.
I hope so.
It's good. We picked out a lot of people in our company have an opinion about coffee, so they, we rolled with it because it represents where we're from, and then we tried to pick something that's also tastes good. So
that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, you'll be getting some of that coming your way.
Perfect.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you for answering those questions. And now we can roll right back into the thick of what topics that you're really interested in and presently entrenched in. When it comes to PMG, like what had been established when you first jumped in with them? And I guess to start, how did this come to be? Let's start there. This is pretty new. Like you
Yeah.
just did this, what, how many months now?
4.
Okay, 4
Yeah.
months. 4
4.
months in, I mean, you were with Grace Hill, we'll just
Mhm.
say, and you were there for a year. You jumped out of property management to Grace Hill to the supplier side, and now back to property management, but as a president of a new company. So how did this all happen?
Yeah, right? Like, and that's again the beauty of this industry. You just never know how
Mhm.
well, I believe this anyway, right? Like the who I am today is going to matter. How I treat people, how I talk to people, who I am, what I do, it will matter down the road. And that's where this opportunity came up is I had spent a lot of time at FBI and ended up leaving in November of 2021. I was ready to move on and kind of go in a different direction. I'd been in property management. I've been in property management for now, 15 years, and just was really kind of looking to take the next step in my career and build something. I wanted to build something, and had a lot of ideas about how to do things differently, or just thinking outside the box. And so I actually took a few months off and just kind of reset myself after having spent so much time in one particular organization in one particular role. Super
Yeah.
grateful for all the experience that I had there. I mean, we went through a lot. I mean, working through just the pandemic and being in a position to help influence policies and training and direction, and I learned so much. But I was just ready to kind of take a breather, and landed at Grace Hill as Senior Director of Multifamily Product Management. And that was awesome because I got to have a say in the product strategy and how to help meet multifamily customers, solve the problems of multifamily customers. And it was so exciting because I wanted to help do things differently and solve problems differently on a larger scale. And they, welcomed me in with open arms, and we still have a really great relationship. I'd always really worked with Grace Hill, and it was a very natural fit for me. I loved everything about product management. I never thought I was going to go back to the operations side. I was like, this is going to be my jam, and ended up connecting with a managing director or director of asset management at Tides Equities. So Tides has experienced lots of growth, and PMG is the managing agent for Tides Equities. So we're talking, they went from 20 buildings to 120 buildings in 12 months with not a lot of time to put any infrastructure in place. Like when you're closing deals like that, all you have time to do is close deals. So
That's
uh,
crazy.
we connected originally to see if I was interested in doing some consulting for multifamily, which I had done off and on, but really selective about the projects I took on because I had a full-time job and going to school and all that. So after a few conversations, they asked me if I'd be interested in coming on full-time. And I really took a look at the opportunity and all the things that I love, not only about multifamily, but about organizational development, which I was going to school for. So I'm like,
Mhm.
gosh, this was just the perfect time. And it it they've got a lot of assets that are established. The co-founders of Tides are very smart. They are very aggressive in their buying, but the strategy is like this business plan is going to be the business plan that a lot of investors are going after. It's the value add renovation, which is something that we will do exceptionally well. But coming in, I mean, there was no time to implement technology or take a look at user settings, things like that. So we've really been starting from the beginning with what do we have, what's working, what's not working, trying to make sure that the team gets the right training and the right skills and problem solving that way. And some of it's been very experimental, we've not done everything right. We've definitely made mistakes. Some of it's trial and error. And then, onboarding an executive team that shares this vision of wanting to build the company that we've always wanted to work for has been also really exhilarating. But I mean, I've only been here for 4 months, and the majority of the leadership team has been here since only January. So there's a lot of push and pull and listening to the organization. And it's tough sometimes, because when you roll things out, no matter how much planning you do, it's like 2 weeks later that you're really seeing the impact of that. And, I'm learning new things every single day. I've never run a company like this before. So I have to be very vulnerable and aware and humble of the fact that I have not done that. So I, can raise my hand and ask for help, and be very transparent in our initiatives. But we're really trying to think about this differently, while also solving the problems that are a result of extreme growth. But that's really all it is. I mean, and I've been through, growth periods, and what's really exciting is to have the buy-in to bring on the technology, to hire the people, to think about things differently. For example, the commission structure that we just rolled out, I had posted about it on LinkedIn actually, and there was some controversy with the commission structure, because our new commission structure includes the service professionals in the split. So that's not a normal thing, but we've got, we love our service team and want our service team to know that they're just as important as anybody else. So the commissions are split for move-ins equally across the whole property. And that's, some of the comments were like, oh, I wonder how your leasing team feels about that. And, we didn't just take, okay, here's your normal commission and just know, moving forward, it's going to be less because we're going to give it to all these people. We completely reimagined the entire thing, and they're actually getting paid more because we are able to increase the amounts across the board. And that's one of those things that really requires you to listen to your organization. We're very team driven, and in an organization that, maybe had more of an individualistic culture to it, we're a little bit more collectivist. That might not fly, but we did a lot of research, and we took a lot of time and care in structuring that and putting that together. And the feedback has been awesome. It's been awesome.
That's great. Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think we're in a time where we got to be more creative when it comes to our service people, when it comes to maintenance, and it's hard to hire for, as everybody knows. Then it's hard to retain, because a lot of people see it as, okay, well, I've learned these skills and I could use those somewhere else and make more money. I could start my own business, whatever. They have a lot of assumptions. I could go somewhere else and make more money. So to be creative makes a lot of sense. You gotta bring them in and make them feel like they're a part of the whole team. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, the people in that side of the business are very important.
Oh, yeah.
And at the end of the day, they're going to be who really keep people in your property. So consistency there is super important. Getting the job done is super important,
Yeah. One of the things that we're really trying to do is make sure that the property team knows that that's the reason why we are all here. It's a very upside down hierarchy. Really the entire reason why I'm here, why the leadership team is here, is to make sure that the property team has what they need. They are the most important people in executing the management agreement requirements. So if they don't understand, or if they're not getting the support, or, if we roll something out, which we've rolled out things that tanked, we didn't do it right, we missed a step, and that's part of experimenting, and that's part of being human, and that's part of doing things that you've never done before, that push the envelope. And we do try to be very transparent with those initiatives, and, kind of help people through that change management process. But I think sometimes people just get in their own way, like organizations get in their own way. I think about our service team, and just like you just said, everybody wants to grow. Everyone wants to succeed. There's there's lots of different like psychological theories about motivation. And one of my favorites is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which says there are psychological and physiological needs in order that you have to fill in order to reach self-actualization, which is like all of my things from my well-being to my health to my purpose-driven life. I feel connected. I feel safe. I'm not hungry. All the things are good. I can now move forward to self-actualize, which means I can go reach my full potential. And in order to do that, sometimes we need to think outside the box, like why can't we create this position for the maintenance team so that way they can feel like they can contribute at a higher level. If I have someone raising their hand with an idea about something, I absolutely want to consider it. Even if we can't do it now, like those are the people who have the ideas that will change organizations if people start listening, So we're trying to be creative about how do we create career paths for people? Where is it that they want to go? How to create exposure to that? How do we better set people up for success? And I've got just an amazing executive team who is actively trying to solve these problems. So the service professionals, especially, is that's a role that we want to take great care in, and we want them to feel like they are like the supervisor can run the building. That they've got that say, they've got that autonomy, and we can better structure and provide resources for the service team, just like we do the property management team.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm a big fan of like, I don't know, trying new things, mixing it up. Like a lot of the things you speak about are things I'm also interested in, organizational psychology, or, there's a lot of different words they use for that part of work, but I'm very interested in that kind of stuff. So it's, I think it's good to think about an organization, and you have like the ability to really just start from scratch and try things, and like, all right, it doesn't work, but at the end of the day, you don't know till you know. So it's great.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting, and when you're problem solving, like it's not like the world gets to stop while you're doing this, and we've had, it's not been perfect, like we've rolled out too much too quick and had to pull back. And we, would roll things out and then realize that this person didn't have access to resources. So it's figuring out, okay, now I got to walk back and, really do it from the inside out. It's easy to get caught up in the outside in. And that's where I think that we've got the ability, anyone who influences or impacts another has to have enough self-awareness to say, I'm getting ahead of myself. Like there is so much trial and error that happens when you are trying to solve big problems very quickly. I went into this knowing that I probably wasn't going to get it right the first time. But I know that my heart's in the right place, and my mantra is integrity always prevails. So I know that if I'm doing the things that I need to do in serving the company and serving the employees and listening and not being afraid to pivot or apologize or look at things differently, which I'm constantly doing, I know that it will get there because our heart's in the right place. So being diligent. I also do I do more reading and research about organizational development from a business standpoint now than I ever did, because there are areas that I need to grow in because I've never done this before. So figuring out like, what does my network look like, looking even outside of multifamily for, executive committees. Like I need to find someone who's been in this position before that I can just talk to, because it's, it can be difficult, and it's good to be able to bounce ideas off of people while you're figuring things out. We do our best to try and mitigate the impact to the organization when we are implementing and trying new things. But that's just kind of that's the nature of the beast, that it has to be okay to fail. It has to be okay to mess it up. It has to be okay to practice. And one of the things that I'm finding is when you come from a culture that, I don't want to say didn't exist, but it almost was like nobody had time for it. I mean, when you're that busy, it's insane. And now we've got this culture that we are all really embracing. But just because I and the new people who come on board understand it and want to implement it and want to talk about it, it does not erase what people have been through. There is like a workplace PTSD that happens where you just get hesitant to speak up if you've been yelled at that before.
Mm.
If you've been told your career, and I guarantee we can all think about that one person in our life who like we feel like we get fired if our email's not working, right? Because there was that one person in our career that really beat us up that way. Those things, like our bodies remember them. And in
Mm.
order to change those psychological schemas or roadmaps, because our brains are kind of lazy and we do routine things and we react in routine ways until something shakes it up where we're like, oh, maybe that's not how I thought that it was.
Well,
So
and you avoid what doesn't feel good.
yeah,
You
because
you take the easiest road in the direction that feels best.
we don't like to be inconvenienced. Our bodies don't.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we don't like when things are uncomfortable. We don't like when things aren't predictable. And when we're in those states where something happens that reminds us of a situation we've been through, it's not just a psychological response, it's a physiological response, right?
Mhm.
Anxiety is a very physical thing. And
Yeah.
learning how to navigate through those and while also being very sensitive to the fact that that exists, I know that in order to be successful, I have to earn trust because
Mhm.
I know that I'm a trustworthy person, but I represent an organization that has maybe created distrust not on purpose, but just because the priorities and the focus was in another direction. So,
Mm.
and we're also not responsible for all of the supervisors who maybe weren't leading or managing in a way that was that identified with our culture now. Uh, but I'm grateful that we've got some really loyal employees who have been through, the change and the growth and the,
Oh yeah.
change management. And I just, I want to make sure that I'm navigating through those things appropriately and helping people see the bigger picture. And it comes with consistency and action and, being a good example, and building that trust.
Yeah. No, I mean, one of the things you talked about in your bio is just what is it? Fearless failure. I
Mhm.
mean, that's and to be transparent and honest when you failed and let other people know, hey, we're going to fix it. Hey, we're thinking of you, like our intentions were best, but we see that it wasn't right.
Yes. And it's such a backwards thing, right? Like we don't want to be wrong. We don't want to admit that we
Admit
messed it
failure.
up. And there's so much like it's self-inflicted. And that's why I get so passionate about it. Fear is fake, right? Fear are stories that we tell
Mm.
ourselves and buy into based on past experiences or fear of loss of something that's really important to us, which could be knowledge, that could be competence, that could be our position, right? They're very real, more of a threat. But the good news is that if we're putting all this effort into the fear, we can also channel that effort into accountability. And
Mhm.
I think that when we understand why things happen, not only do we better understand ourselves, but I always respect and have confidence in the people who know exactly why things went wrong. When I
Mm.
hear like, oh, I don't know, I'm like, well, how are you going to prevent it next time?
Yeah,
If
gonna
someone
keep
can,
doing that.
yeah, if someone comes to me and said, hey, this got messed up. This is what happened. I've already talked about it. This is how we're fixing to move it forward. It's like, our work here is done. Like, cool.
Yeah.
Like it's having that self-awareness and confidence and ability to know that part of being a good leader is someone who you like to push the envelope, to innovate, to cause disruption. You have to mess things up a little bit. Not that we're out here, nobody wakes up and says, today is the day I'm just going to mess a bunch of stuff up. Nobody says that. Residents don't even say that, despite what some
Yeah.
people might think.
No.
And it's all about being a human being. And I feel like I'm an expert in what not to do. Yep.
Hey, I mean, that's half the battle, right? Trying to try and do it right anyways. I think you get there by having a view from above, right? Like trying to
Mhm,
see all the pieces and how they interconnect. And you can't create an organization if you're only looking at one piece.
mhm.
So you have to really have that bird's eye view and pay attention to this and how it interacts with that and what's it going to do to that if you do this. And so, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's there's so many things in there. It's like how do you do that? Or, where do you start? And I mean, it really is a lot of listening. It's a lot
Yeah.
of listening. When I started, I went and I walked properties. I looked at, what if you say this is market ready? Like, I want to know what your definition of that is. Like, what does the
Mhm.
product look like? Are your residents happy? I wanted to talk to the maintenance team. I walked the maintenance shops. I want to make sure that they have all the safety equipment that they need, that they hear from me, that, I want them to take a lunch break. I mean, it's just so important to go talk to people. Things will start to surface and manifest. And the best leaders are really the best conductors. You're putting the right people in place to be able to execute. And my leadership team, I was very aware of where I had more weaknesses than strengths. And so brought people on that had strengths in areas where I was weak and vice versa, because I'm not and didn't hire people because I thought that they would be the best at executing my personal agenda.
Right.
I brought people on who shared the same vision and alignment and want to get out of their way. I do my best to try and stay available for them, because having a decision maker who you can't get a decision from is such a big roadblock. And I need this team to know that they can execute. They've got the autonomy to do so, and that I can get the answers that they need in order for them to do it. So it's just kind of a different way of looking at leading an organization, because all the things that you just said, that balcony view, when you're down on the dance floor, you can't, I mean, you might look around and say, everyone's having a good time. But it's not
Yeah.
really until you go up to the balcony where you see, different clusters of people. Not everyone might be having fun. And, sometimes the easiest and the biggest miss is, am I playing the type of music that everybody likes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does everyone know the dance moves? Did I bother to ask what they would like to see happen here?
And,
And when you
and,
do that, it's,
and for
yeah,
this industry, that's probably really hinges on mostly the people in the office, right? Like leasing office or whatever, like basing all decisions around those people and like what they like, and not really thinking about the other supporting cast, like asking them, what do you like?
yeah, absolutely. And they might not have all the answers, but I've been on site before, and it's frustrating when you feel like the leadership team doesn't get it. And there are more things that I have exposure to now where I can see why if this is such a problem, isn't it changing today? And
Yeah.
it is because change management needs to happen. And we've experimented with both. We have rolled things out very quickly that tanked, and we needed to
Mm.
go back to the drawing board and re-review why. And then there's things that we're still working on that people have been asking for, and we're letting them know that it's coming, but it hasn't happened yet because it's going to require some change management. People do well when they know what to expect. So a little
Hmm.
communication and transparency goes a long way.
Yeah, for sure it does. The more the better.
Hmm.
If people can hear from you and know and trust that you're even thinking about the thing, then you have a little bit more solace in the fact that, okay, they're working on it. They're moving in the right direction. Um, they're hearing from us.
Yeah.
Yeah, very important. And I just wanted to point out there's a bunch of people that have made comments. Stephanie just mentioned, people definitely struggle with change, right? And it's uncomfortable. But she just wanted to give you kudos for tackling it and going
Yeah.
after that.
Thank you, Stephanie. She's also a game changer, so she knows what that's like. And I think what people don't realize with change, even positive change, is that there's always a loss associated with change. So let's say you get promoted, that's a positive change, right? But you are losing your competence in your current role, right? Because now you've got all these pressures of meeting expectations of a job that you've never done before. That's nerve-wracking, right? So you maybe lose a little bit of confidence. You lose your tenure in that role. You lose your comfortability and confidence in that role. So there's always a loss. And that loss is what we have to be very intentional about managing for people. So if there is when you move, let's say you bought your dream home, there's still a loss of confidence and competence that goes along with changing your situation. So when we can get good at managing the loss associated with change, that's a key to great, well thought out change management, is compensating for what people might lose when you make this change. Right. Even if it's time or efficiency, at first you got to call those things out and help people manage through that.
Right. Yep. All very good. Everybody's listening, right? Best to learn from people in the thick of like change and really trying new things, because I mean, it's only most people stick within their comfort, like you were saying. And I've done some things to get really uncomfortable myself. And if you stick with it, it eventually gets better. And like on the other side, it actually is something reward, because you've learned a lot. And at the end of the day, what I find is you learn whether you like it or not. Right. Mm-hmm. Like if you don't try new things, you are stuck in a place where maybe you don't belong, but you don't know any better. So
that uncomfortableness is definitely giving you like clues about change, or that change needs to happen. I use this analogy a lot, but it's kind of like when you play a video game, the very first level is always really easy because you're like learning the controls, trying to figure out what the moves are, learning the lay of the land. And then as soon as you get used to it, you have to go beat the boss. And right. You have to, use all the things that you've just learned at one time. And it might take you a couple days. You might throw your controller at the TV, but eventually you do it and you level up. Right. That uncomfortableness is the key to getting to the next level. So It's like once you've learned what you need to, you are, you got to be some form of a boss. And there's actually a lot of even psychological development theories about that, like with even lifespan development, managing through, like you have to go through different crises in order to grow. And how well you manage going through that crisis determines how well you do on the next set of challenges. So that growth will not happen unless there is a level of discomfort. And if you're feeling and can acknowledge that, you can almost look around and say, I'm about to grow. Like something is not right. And usually like you start to know better and you need to go back. And the things that I thought that I knew going into this role were not the same 2 weeks from then, 3 weeks from then. They're not the same today as they were yesterday. I'm constantly kind of like when you are putting together like an experiment, you've got a hypothesis, right? When you finish that experiment, you've got information that has to go back and influence and impact and changes your original hypothesis. I'm constantly going back and doing that. Like even the things that I set in motion today, I've got to be willing to know that when things start to get uncomfortable or they're not going as planned, that maybe my organization has grown in a way where what I thought was going to be good or thought was going to be happening is no longer relevant because we've already surpassed it. So there's always something about discomfort that you can learn from.
Yes. Yeah. I love and hate because discomfort, like it's not fun in the midst of it, but like, that you're growing if you're doing it. Right. Mm-hmm. And I just think there's a lot to that. William had a comment or question, I should say. When did you know or decide you were good with moving up in your role, moving up into a new thing?
Well, first, I just have to shout out William Puckett because he and I were the dream team back in the day. He was my maintenance supervisor, and we like managed the heck out of Issaquah, Washington. So uh,
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed watching your journey, William, and he was just such a special connection for me. I've never been okay with being okay. And I think that's part of who I am as a person is my drive to just see what I'm capable of. I don't believe in limits and actually structure my life to remove limits, right? So like I pay my bills on time, so my credit's never a problem. I
Mm.
work out and eat well, so I stay healthy and I don't ever have to say, "Oh, I can't do that." So I've part of how I'm motivated, which I think is, something that people should look at is like, how am I motivated and am I really, living my purpose here? So for me, it's like figuring out what the next step is and what it is that I actually want to do. And I want to build something significant. I want to build something that, leaves an impact. And that's always been part of who I am. I love helping people see that when they are 100% themselves, how powerful that they can be. So I love helping people thrive and super passionate about housing, which is why this role worked well. But usually I know when I've outgrown something. Um,
Mm.
and so that's a key is have I outgrown where I'm at? And anytime we're sitting here looking for more, because I'm also not a quiet person, if I see or I'm advocating for change, I know that I need to be in a position where I've got enough mental stimulation that I get to problem solve, that I get to make an impact and, get to help critically think about things. And I know that I need to be in a position to execute. So, and a lot of that has come with just frustrations in other
Mm.
roles and knowing what I can or cannot tolerate and finding the right role. I just get so much satisfaction out of moving things in the right direction. That's one of the reasons why we have a rocket ship in our logos at PMG is I told Tides before they brought me on board, like I've got a reputation of moving like a rocket ship. So, I hope that you're ready. And they're like, bring it on. So the rocket ship thing has definitely come into play, but a lot of it is I know myself really well and I know when I'm ready for more and I'm not afraid to go get it. And I'm
Nice.
also not afraid to know that the environment that I'm in isn't conducive to what I have to give. And that is a tough thing. When I left FPI, it was a difference of leadership direction. And that was a really hard decision to make. It was it was months of talking about things and figuring out where they could go. And at the end of the day, I grew so much because of my experiences there that I was ready to take something else on. And
Mm.
it wasn't the same direction as the organization. And to be able to have and acknowledge those differences and have the conversations like I might not be the right leader for where you're looking to go, that was really, really hard. But I'm the person that can't show up and not do what I feel like I'm meant to do every day and be okay with it. And
Yeah.
that's just me as a person.
Yeah. But I think if people were honest, they would feel better if they listened to themselves more. And I think it's great and admirable that you actually pay attention to yourself because, I'm similar. Like if I don't feel like I'm useful where I'm at, it's like, why am I here? Like, I,
Mhm.
I mean, I, I know I can do more than what I'm doing. So maybe I shouldn't be here, like when you get to that place and you listen to yourself, and I guess that's where it comes down to like self discovery. You really got to pay attention to yourself and really pay attention to what brings you life, what makes you tick, and what are you naturally good at that contributes positively to a company or whatever it is. So,
Yeah. And almost being a champion for yourself that way. You
yeah,
know, one of the things I remember when I left FPI, I got a lot of questions like why? And I mean, it was a
sure.
sudden. And I mean, really, they were we had a lot of open conversations, and that I would always encourage people to be an advocate for their own selves, because
Mhm.
so many times we might sit here and we might be frustrated and want to leave or whatever. But in my experience, most people want the feedback, and they can only do something about the information they're made aware of. So we have a responsibility to communicate if something's not right. And there's one of the reasons I love organizational psychology is there is so much self-worth and value placed on your job role. And so it's a really tough thing to, like, okay, am I going to be the person who says I want to contribute more, or I didn't appreciate how that went, or I need this to look different? There's a lot at stake in our own minds, like that self-inflicted fear that could
Yeah.
come up. And we don't always have people in our professional lives that are receptive to feedback, which makes it even more difficult. Like, how do you influence the person that has the influence?
Mhm.
And sometimes we have to decide whether or not that's the right fit, because we can't change everybody. And
Right.
people will see, like, again, integrity always prevails. Sooner or later, who that person is will surface itself on their own. But
Yeah.
we also have to be able to protect ourselves and say this either is or isn't the right environment for me. And if
Sure.
we're speaking up and communicating and it's not going anywhere, then we have our own tough decisions to make. But the meaning that's placed on work creates a lot of fear when it comes to speaking up. And a lot of it is self-inflicted, because we've got a lot to lose, and managing ourselves through that, like regulating down, like, okay, what's going to happen if what are the facts and what are the feelings about these two things? And if we look and focus on the facts and take the feelings out of it, it's a lot easier for us to manage and regulate around enough to have the conversations to ask for what we need.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we're going to have to get a real cup of coffee in real life here in Covington, you and I, because I think we have a lot that we share in common. And it would be great to actually do that.
Yes, I would love that.
But I really do just appreciate you taking the time. I know you're obviously busy, a lot going on with everything PMG, and you're at a conference and everything else. So I do truly appreciate you giving me a little bit of your time and here on Boss Talks, and those that are watching.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate those that have watched and participated and commented. It always makes it fun to have that going on.
Yeah.
So
thank you for having me and
absolutely.
letting me share a little bit about what we're doing here. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to give you one last opportunity. If there's one takeaway, one thing that you think needs to be disrupted, and maybe you already said it, the most in multifamily, what is it?
Oh, I have to just pick one.
The big one. The big one.
Oh, opinion-based decisions.
Okay.
That stop doing it. Stop making opinion-based choices.
Instead of based on facts.
Data. It's there.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Listen to people, like listening, like that's data, like let's
Yeah.
stop doing what we want to do or what we think is best, and start listening and diving in and discovering and getting the data and being a little bit more methodical and strategic about what it is that we're doing and who it's impacting. So
Right.
that'd be it. I've got more, but that's the big one right now.
Yeah. If you want to use your feelings, use it after you've looked at the data.
Yes. I mean, that very much sums it up, because problems don't make themselves problems. People make things problems, and half the time they're getting worked up about something that's not even real. So that's why I'm so passionate about critical thinking, is like, let's use logic and reason and figure out what it is that we need to be upset about before we get upset.
Sure. Yeah. If only us humans could do that well.
Oh, I know. I mean,
naturally.
It's not easy. I mean, I forget to do that all the time. I do.
Yeah. Yeah. But we'll keep pushing forward. We'll keep trying to achieve that. But I think transparency and all the things you're doing, as much as you're making mistakes and everything, that's okay, because you only fall as long as you're falling forward, right? And you're not falling backwards and backwards and backwards, then I think you're making progress and it's all good. So I applaud you. And again, we'll have to get together and talk about all this more, because that'd be really great.
Definitely.
So thanks again for being on the show. Thanks for everybody that watched. Just like she jumped on and jumped into Boss Talks, you too can. Whether it's something you're passionate about, something you want to share with others, I want to hear from you. And it doesn't have to be that you are the president of a company, although she is. And that's awesome. But it's also awesome to see how she's grown in ways and taken risk. And you too can, by just jumping on a show like this, because you're jumping out of your comfort zone. William, he actually jumped on. I don't know if you know, he was one of my guests early on. And so you should go back and listen to that as well, because it was really fun to have him on the show. And he says I'm a G, so I guess I'm a G. So, but yeah, reach out to me and I'll see you guys next week, Wednesday. It's always on Wednesday here on LinkedIn, YouTube, and on Facebook, and also the podcast. Check that out if you want to listen. So it's always been fun to be on Boss Talks and have you be a part of it. Until next time, I'll see you later.
Thank you.